Welcome to Freedomfully, where we cultivate your retirement journey together.
Here's a question worth sitting with. When did we lose the seasons from our plates? Somewhere in the last few decades, the grocery store became a place of permanent abundance. Strawberries in January, asparagus in October, tomatoes that look like tomatoes but taste like almost nothing. Available always, nourishing far less than they appear. Seasonal eating is the practice of returning to something older and wiser, eating the foods that are actually growing right now, in your region, at their natural peak. It sounds simple, and it is. But the effects on your health, your wallet, your environmental impact, and your connection to the living world are genuinely profound. Let's start with nutrition, because this is where the science is clearest. When a fruit or vegetable is harvested at its natural peak of ripeness, picked when it's actually ready, it is at its absolute maximum concentration of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. The moment it's harvested, that nutritional value begins declining. Out-of-season produce is typically picked before it's ripe, so it can survive long-distance transport, then ripened artificially in transit or in storage. By the time it reaches you, it may have traveled thousands of miles and spent weeks in a refrigerated warehouse. The food looks fine, but what's inside has diminished significantly. When you buy a tomato at your local farmer's market in August, it was likely picked within the past day or two. That difference between days and weeks is the difference between food that genuinely nourishes and food that merely fills. The flavor difference is also real and remarkable. A peak season strawberry in June tastes nothing like a January strawberry shipped from across the continent. Once you start eating seasonally, it becomes nearly impossible to go back. Not out of discipline, but out of preference. Peak season food is simply more delicious. There's a financial benefit too, worth noting especially for those on fixed incomes. Seasonal produce is abundant, locally grown, and requires no long-distance transport, which means it's typically significantly cheaper than out-of-season imports. The same tomatoes that cost a premium in January are inexpensive and abundant at summer markets. Aligning your meals with what's in season is one of the most naturally frugal approaches to nourishing yourself well. The environmental dimension matters here too. Out-of-season food carries a heavy carbon footprint: greenhouse growing, long-haul refrigerated transport, extended cold storage. Seasonal, locally grown food requires a fraction of that energy. Choosing it is a direct, practical act of environmental stewardship that requires no sacrifice at all. In fact, you get better food in return. And then there's something harder to quantify, but deeply felt: the spiritual and emotional dimension of eating with the seasons. When your diet follows the rhythm of the year, light greens and tender herbs in spring, abundant tomatoes and stone fruit in summer, hearty squash and root vegetables in autumn, grounding citrus and dark leafy greens in winter, you feel it. You become attuned to the cycle of the year in a way that is both grounding and quietly joyful. The return of asparagus in April becomes a small celebration. The first summer peach becomes an event. This is a form of presence, of gratitude, of connection to the natural world that no supplement can replicate. Let me give you a practical seasonal guide to carry with you. In spring, look for tender salad greens, spinach, lettuce, arugula, asparagus, peas, radishes, fresh herbs like mint, chives, and parsley. Spring produce is delicate and best prepared simply, lightly dressed, briefly cooked, or eaten raw. In summer, tomatoes, corn, cucumbers, zucchini, bell peppers, eggplant, green beans, and an extraordinary abundance of berries and stone fruits: peaches, nectarines, cherries, plums. Summer is the season of raw eating, simple salads, and the grill. In autumn, winter squash, sweet potatoes, pumpkins, apples, pears, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, and the first hardy greens returning after the summer heat. Autumn produce loves long, slow cooking: soups, roasted vegetables, warm grain bowls. In winter, root vegetables like carrots, beets, parsnips, and turnips. Citrus fruits rich in vitamin C, right when your immune system needs it most. Kale, collard greens, and cabbage, some of the most nutrient-dense foods available. And stored onions, garlic, and winter squash that keep for months. The most direct way to start is to visit your local farmer's market. Talk to the farmers. Ask what's coming in this week. what's at peak, what they're most proud of. That conversation, between you and the person who grew your food, is itself a form of nourishment that the grocery store simply cannot offer. If there's a CSA, a community-supported agriculture program, near you, joining one is one of the best decisions a seasonally minded eater can make. You pay a modest fee at the beginning of the season and receive a weekly box of whatever is at peak on that farm. It introduces you to vegetables you might never have chosen yourself, expands your cooking repertoire, and builds a direct, meaningful relationship with the land that feeds you. Here's my question for you today. What is your favorite seasonal food? The one whose return each year genuinely feels like a gift? Or what's your most beloved find from a farmer's market? Share it in the comments. Our community's answers to this question are always some of my favorite reading of the week. If today's video inspired you toward the farmer's market this weekend, please give it a like and share it with someone who'd appreciate the reminder that the most nourishing food is also often the most joyful. Subscribe to Freedomfully and ring the bell so you never miss a new conversation. Eating with the seasons isn't a discipline, it's a homecoming. Eat seasonally as you cultivate your freedom fully.